He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a man who is alive. Seneca. So you're anxious about not doing well at something because you're afraid of failing. Because failure means you probably won't be respected. And if you're not respected, people won't go out of their way to help you. If people aren't helping you, you're all on your own. If you're all alone, you're unloved. If you're unloved, what's stopping you from winding up homeless and full of despair and disease? It's crazy to say out loud, but maybe that anxiety you're feeling about meeting with the supervisor about your latest project really just stems from a primitive paranoia of death. I worry. Equal or more than most. Or maybe we all think that. But I don't want to medicate just because I worry. I self-medicate by working really hard throughout the day and then relaxing in the evening. Meditation, even after all these years, I'm not sure I feel the benefits. But exercise, that works. More confidence, sometimes better sleep, but less worry. Staying organized, that works. Clarity comes from a clean environment. Definitely less worry. What caused the most worry I've ever felt? Well, it was not from having too many things to do. Write a list of priorities and then just bang them out one by one. For better or for worse, we cannot do more than one thing at a time. So there's really no point in getting overwhelmed. My worst worry is when I've had absolutely nothing to do. No work, no plan, no life, no purpose, no reason, no meaning. Have you ever Googled what to do when you're bored? That's one of the worst feelings. Neuroscientist Joseph LeDoux talks about how the amygdala, the fear center in our brain, can trigger a threat even before the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of our brain, can assess if the threat is real or completely unfounded. That is why anxiety feels immediate and physical. Your body is reacting before your mind understands. Psychologist David Buss said that fear evolved as a survival mechanism. It's wired to overreact. If our ancestors saw a snake and ran away, but there was no snake, no harm done. But if they missed a real threat, game over. So we inherited brains that prefer false alarms. We inherited brains that prefer false alarms. Well, ain't that a thing? Translation today, fear of being broke, unloved, or left out. Modern adaptations of being eaten by a jaguar. Freud believed that we fear things that symbolize deeper unconscious conflicts. You're not afraid of the job interview. You're afraid of being exposed as a fraud, of your father's disapproval, of your own ambition. Fear becomes a mask for emotional repression. Erich Fromm even argues that humans fear freedom because it brings responsibility and uncertainty. We say that we want independence, but we often sabotage it by choosing comfort, routines, or even bad relationships over the anxiety of limitless possibility. In Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl writes that fear becomes overwhelming when life lacks meaning. But when you find purpose, even in suffering, you can become psychologically invincible. So we're never going to eliminate fear, but maybe you can give your fear a purpose. This aligns with what Chris Williamson is often saying on the Modern Wisdom podcast, or as Tim Ferriss calls, fear setting. Not goal setting, but walking through the worst case scenario just to prove to yourself that it's survivable. Dissolve fear through logic. You stop reacting to shadows when you name the shape. Carl Jung believed our greatest fears often point towards the parts of ourselves that we've rejected. Anxiety is the shadow knocking. What part of you is trying to come alive that you're suppressing? Modern psychology identifies a trait called the intolerance of uncertainty, which is common in people with anxiety. You're not fearing the worst thing that could happen. You're fearing the idea of whether or not it could happen. This is why open loops feel unbearable. There's no end to the psychological suffering. Your brain wants resolution. But when there's no outcome, it fills the gaps, often with imagined threats. This response is tied to the Zeigarnik Effect, which shows we fixate constantly on unresolved situations as opposed to resolved ones. Unfortunately, our minds prefer a negative conclusion than none at all. Uncertainty is harder to tolerate than bad news. Your brain would rather imagine catastrophe than sit in ambiguity. So, what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of a thing or of a feeling that might occur because of a thing? Do you really have any idea what's going on? Is it a fear of potentially having to be more vulnerable at some given time? Have you forced yourself to be in uncomfortable situations? If you do, you realize that life can be more of a picnic than panic. Yes, fear kept us alive 10,000 years ago. Now it keeps us employed, tired, and quiet. Worry is not useful for preparation or really anything at all. Your fear wants you small, but growth wants you exposed and in motion. Courage doesn't have to be loud, but it also doesn't not have to be loud. You can carry fear and still take action. You can be unsure and still show up. Don't let your fear paralyze you. No great thing was ever done by not taking a big risk. Take the risk. You're not going to die. Probably. All right, builders, see you every Sunday. And remember, growth equals accepting fear as an ancient part of our DNA and walking forward anyway. Brick by brick, we'll get there. Valeu!